Hey guys, it's Ajay here, aka Waltzing Wizard, and today we're going to be doing another tutorial. This tutorial is going to be a little bit different than the other tutorials because before I was sort of starting to get into openers, and I did the combo opener, and then I did perfect clear openers, and then the next tutorial was going to be on whatchamacallit, it's going to be on TKI openers. But I realized as I was making that tutorial that I didn't really want people to think that in order to start using T-spins in their game, that they needed to just sort of memorize the correct opener, because then people sort of get lost from there and they don't understand like how setting up T-spins work, why they want to use them, what the advantages are, and they sort of are blindly copying an opening, and that's not really what the fun of Tetris is. The fun of Tetris to me is, I think, like understanding how to use everything and what the best ways to use it are. And so to do that, I wanted to instead make a sort of general intro to T-spinning video, how to like start incorporating T-spins into your play. So let's go ahead and do that. So this is going to be how to start T-spinning. So why do we want to use T-spins, right? I mean, Tetrises send a lot of lines too. In fact, Tetrises send the same amount of lines as a T-spin does, right? But the important thing is that T-spins actually send double the amount of lines per line cleared. What does that mean? So a Tetris clears 4 lines, but it sends 4 lines. A T-spin clears only 2 lines, but sends 4 lines. Why is that important? Because it means that in order to set one up, you need to place half the amount of pieces than you would if you were using Tetrises. And therefore, if you keep the speed that you play constant, you'll end up sending roughly double the amount of lines in the same amount of time by using T-spins than you would doing Tetrises. Obviously, it's not that simple because it takes a little bit more mental energy, so you're going to slow down a little bit with T-spins. Also, depending on the game, the soft drop speed might be a little bit important. And then also you have to set up an overhang, so it's not exactly half the amount of pieces that you have placed. It's like half plus 1, right? Another reason why you would want to use T-spins is that it accounts for the back-to-back bonus along with your Tetrises. So the back-to-back bonus, I'm keeping this tutorial general, so I'm not going to mention that it specifically sends like 1 or 2 more lines. But depending on the game of Tetris that you play, it usually sends either 1 extra line or 2 extra lines if you have the back-to-back bonus going. If you don't understand what back-to-back means, I recommend you go watch my first tutorial, Intro to Multiplayer Tetris, where I talk about all of these terms. It can also be used to very quickly cancel garbage. You would generally want to be canceling garbage if you have a lot of garbage on your screen already, and so it's really important to be able to set up a T-spin there to cancel incoming garbage so you don't get sent more. Whereas if you have a lot of messy garbage on your screen already, it's next to impossible to set up a Tetris unless you use a lot of your own pieces above the garbage, and then that's not efficient because you're not downstacking while setting that up, right? So you want to be using as many of the gray blocks, the gray garbage blocks, in your downstacking as possible. And so it's a lot better to cancel using a T-spin because that'll clear some of the gray blocks as well, instead of trying to set up a Tetris around a 1-line garbage hole. Additionally, if you have messy garbage in between Tetris holes, you can use T-spins to maintain your back-to-back bonus while clearing those Tetris holes. So those are the main reasons why you T-spin. There are lots of reasons. It's by far the most efficient strat that you can do besides like 4-wide comboing. So I'd say like the most efficient flexible strategy you can do. I'll add that flexible in as a so that people don't say like, wait, but I thought you said 4-wide combos are the most efficient. Yeah, they are, but you know, you can T-spin from any position. So the process that I'm going to go through is what I think you should do in order to start incorporating T-spins into your gameplay. Some people might disagree with this, but I think this is a very streamlined way to go, and if you sort of like the advice that I've given so far on this channel, then I think this should work pretty well for you. It's going to incorporate a lot of the things that I've talked about in other videos and seamlessly incorporate T-spins into that. So don't worry too much about memorizing this process because I've repeated this slide later in the PowerPoint once I go over each of these things. So the first thing you're going to do is learn the overhangs. So that's just getting comfortable with all the different ways in which you can set up a T-spin. The next thing I want you to do is to practice in Cheese Race, which I'm going to show you later on. After that, learn one simple opener So I don't want you to memorize all the variations. I know something like TKI3 has like a million. There's castle top variation and like this other variation and then like all the bird variation, right? There's like albatross and pelican and like who knows what. All these like crazy variations that you can do on these things. All you want to be able to do in this step is to just get started with one T-spin. You don't need to learn the follow-ups. You don't need to learn variations. It doesn't even need to work all the time. It's perfectly okay to start the game with a Tetris opener and use T-spins later, as you've probably seen me do in many of my games. The next thing I want you to do is complete a sprint game with as many T-spins as possible, focusing on efficiency. And then lastly, you need to create a new account and then start using T-spins as your primary strategy. And I think this is important because a lot of people get frustrated when they start using T-spins and suddenly they're a lot slower, they have to think a lot, and then it's very easy to get frustrated as you start deranking on Tetris Friends or on Facebook Tetris, and you're not as good, and it seems like you've gotten worse, right? And so I think if you create a new account and then sort of start climbing from the beginning, it's a lot more of a forgiving process. So let's talk about that first part, right? Learn the overhangs. So first of all, you want to start recognizing when it's possible to set up a T-spin. And usually you want to look for this 1-0-1 pattern, right? So there's 1 tetramino here, there's 0 here, and there's 1 here. Now this is all relative to the bottom of the screen, but this could all exist further up, and the 0 could exist like here or something, and the 1 is just 1 over wherever we've decided 0 is. So this is 1-0-1 is all relative, right? And then based on that, I want you to start categorizing the types of overhangs based on what exists next to the 1-0-1 pattern. So I've sort of organized it in this way on this slide. Sorry if the bottom ones are cut off, by the way. I think my webcam might be here. I'm not sure. But these last ones aren't too important. So the first one that's up here is if there's like a -1 next to the 1-0-1, right? Or sorry, not -1, 0. So this is 0-1-0-1, right? This sort of pattern. In which case, the only thing you can do is use this J piece to create the overhang. Obviously, you can do an L if it's on the other side, but for these examples, for the sake of consistency and simplicity, I've chosen to do all the overhangs on the left. If there's a 1 next to your 1-0-1, then you have a couple choices. You can use a Z piece as shown here, an S piece as shown here, or a T piece as shown here. Next, if there's a 2 next to your 1-0-1, this is probably the one where you have the most options, because any piece that has a flat setting is going to work here. So like the I piece can be put flat here, the O piece can be flat. This L piece could be put in the flat setting if you had multiple rows of 2 here, or even if it's not flat, as you can see, then you can have this dip a little bit. If you have a 1 next to the 2, then you can put this L piece here, or a J on the other side. And then if it's like a staircase next to it, then you can use this Z piece, or if there's a staircase on the other side, you can use the S piece. The next thing is if there's a 3 next to the 1-0-1 pattern, in which case you want to use something to overhang slightly below the edge. And so you can do this. You can see in this case it's done using a J piece here. You can also go 1 lower using an S piece, or 1 lower using a T piece. In general, you don't want to be doing these ones with the T piece, because you want to be as efficient as possible using as many of your T's for the actual T-spin and not to create the overhang. But sometimes if you have a lot of T's coming up and you have no other options, you can definitely use the T as the overhang as well. And then lastly, if you have a 4, this is the most that you can possibly still create an overhang with, in which case, just like before, the only option was a J, now it's an L. If it was on the other side, the only option in this case would be a J, and the only option before would have been an L. So just you need to familiarize yourself with all these different types of overhangs. The next thing you want to do is decide which side would be better to have an overhang on. And when you're deciding this, you need to think about where the residual is going to end up being. So what do I mean by a residual? So let's take this for example. Once we clear this T-spin, these 4 blocks here are still going to be there. Or in this case, once you clear the T-spin, these 4 blocks are going to be here. Or in this case, once you clear the T-spin, these 2 blocks are going to be here. So no matter what, you always end up with the overhang plus whatever was over it still left over. And so if you have a hole underneath, you want to make sure that you decide which side to put the residual on based on that. And so to do this, let me just illustrate this real quick, actually. Instead of just telling you, perhaps I can show an example. So let's see, let's just set something random up real quick. How do I want to do this? What's the best way to show this? Let's do... Okay, so in this case, I have a hole underneath my green piece here, right? And I've recognized that there's this 101 pattern. And so, shoot, I have my fingers in the wrong spot. Okay, so here I could create an overhang like this, but then once I clear the T-spin, then this overhang is still going to be there, and it's going to be blocking my garbage hole. And so I actually want it to be on the right side, not the left side. And so therefore, I'm going to do this, and here I can have a Z piece here to create this overhang. I also could have used another T piece to create the same overhang here, because this is a 3, right? So I could have used, so I can use the Z piece here. I also could have used an L piece in the same way to create this overhang. But L pieces aren't coming for a while because I just used a lot of L's there. So you see I purposely put the overhang on this side instead of the other side. And that way, once I actually like cleared the T-spin here, now my garbage hole is available and I can send the back-to-back Tetris right afterwards, right? So that's just a quick example of what I was talking about regarding that. So let's see, back to the PowerPoint. Okay, so that's deciding which side is better to have the overhang on. Once you get more comfortable with these kinds of overhangs, you can start creating fancier ones like so. And so as you can see, like these overhangs that I have at the bottom, possibly the L piece one is cut off because of my webcam. I didn't actually take that into account, my bad. But these aren't super important, but you can see that you can actually use the residual from a line clear to create the overhang. So like once you place this L piece here and this line gets cleared, then the leftover part will still have an opening here for you to fit the T piece in, but the residual of this L piece, once the line is cleared, will have the overhang for the T-spin. Okay, so the next step is to practice in Cheese Race. So when you do this, I want you to not worry about the time. Even though the point of Cheese Race is to get through the garbage as quick as possible, in this case we're just using it as a tool to learn for multiplayer Tetris. And so you want to be worrying about efficiency. So what's efficiency? Efficiency is the proportion of T-spins, or sorry, the proportion of T pieces that are used for T-spins, okay? So let me say that again, the proportion of T pieces that are used for T-spins. So what does this mean? So well, every 7 pieces that come in an SRS, sorry, not SRS, in a guideline game is going to have all 7 pieces in them, which means that you have a set number of T pieces that are going to drop over the course of a game. And so every time you use a T-piece in stacking or in creating an overhang, that's a T-spin that you're not going to be able to send to your opponent in the long run. Assuming that you and your opponent are playing at the same speed, if they use that T-piece to send a T-spin, then they will eventually win. So you definitely want to be as efficient as possible. And so by focusing on efficiency, it's going to make you be very creative with using your T-pieces to create T-spins in a variety of different ways and using all of the overhangs that we talked a lot about. It's also good to practice this just because it has a lot of carryover to canceling out incoming attacks from your opponent. These 2 examples that I have on this are from Heibo Mai playing. He's possibly one of the best versus Tetris players of all time. In fact, he's probably one of the best Tetris players overall of all time. He was won all but one of the Tetris tournament online tournaments on Tetris Friends, hosted by Hard Drop, and he's just a phenomenal player. And you can see here, this was from his game versus Master from last year's TTO. He's setting up T-spins here even though he has a lot of garbage underneath, and it's because he sees that Master, in this case, he has a lot of garbage underneath and it's messy garbage, and so he's using this to cancel the incoming attack coming from Master. And notice how he's set the overhang on the left side here, which is really good because he knows that after this T-spin is done, he only wants to use it to cancel, and then he wants to get right back to down stacking so that he can play more aggressively in the future. And he knows that the next garbage hole that he needs to clear is right on the right side here. And so if he had put this overhang on the right side, it would have slowed down the downstacking after the T-spin. And so it's very important that he put the O piece here on the left side. The O piece was actually the last piece that he placed in this game when I took the screenshot. And so he definitely had the choice to put it on either side. And of course, Hebomai, being the phenomenal player that he is, made the correct decision here. In this example, he made the correct overhang decision to put it on the right side. And this is because, obviously, he has a Tetris hole underneath, and this is an aggressive reason why you would put the overhang. So this was a defensive one. He wants to get right to downstacking afterwards. In this one, he has an eyepiece queued up, which unfortunately I cut off in the screenshot. My bad. And so he's immediately, after this T-spin, going to have access to this Tetris hole because these two lines will be cleared, thus freeing up this Tetris hole. And because the overhang is on this side, and he didn't use the Z piece for this overhang, he used the S piece, that way, when he clears this T-spin, he'll be able to immediately use the eyepiece for a back-to-back Tetris right afterwards, which will send a pretty decent spike over to master. So these are the kinds of things you want to be thinking about when you're practicing in Cheese Race, is efficiency and also which side of the overhang that you put it on in order to clear whatever is coming up in your Cheese Race field. So the next part that I want you to do after you've practiced in Cheese Race is to learn simple openers. And I really want to encourage that you don't go crazy here. I know it's very tempting because you're going to look at the hard drop wiki pages on TKI and Albatross. You're going to look at these pages and it's going to show you all these cool ways that you can combo into perfect clears. None of this is ever going to happen in game. I'm telling you it's not going to happen in game. If it does happen in game, you are going to beat them anyway because they're so slow to allow you to create an entire opener from start to finish. And so you were going to beat them anyway. There's no point in learning those things if you're just starting out trying to T-spin. Okay? All I want you to do is learn the first part of all these openers. This is just so that you can start the game with a T-spin, okay? So for the TKI, you would just learn this part of the TKI, okay? Or if you want, then this doesn't have to be a Z plus O, right? This could have been an L plus O. This is like the lead up to the castle top variation. There would be an L here, right? But then there's, I forget what the other variation is called, but there's another one where you have an LO here. But yeah, it doesn't matter which variation you learn. The important part is that this is just one way that on most boards you can set up a T-spin. If you've looked at my self-commentated games, I end up doing a TKI most of the time anyway. There are very few games where you can't coerce it into some sort of a TKI setup. So you can learn the first part of a TKI, you can learn the first part of an Albatross. Interesting part of an Albatross, if you want, once you clear these first two lines, you'll actually have a setup for a T-spin triple afterwards. It's okay if you want to go for that too, since it happens immediately afterwards. There's a chance that you can get it in a lot of your games. So that would just be placing an a J piece here and an L piece there, and you end up with a T-spin triple, right? You can go for that if you want, but I encourage you to just go for the first part. And of course, this is for any of the bird setups, right? There's also the pelican opening, which is like the same thing but slightly different. All the bird setups have the first T-spin slightly hovered like this, so it's like flying. That's why it's called an albatross or a pelican, which I guess is kind of dumb, but whatever. Welcome to dumb names, right? It happens in every video game. I guess if you really want to, if you're a Puyo Puyo Tetris player and you want to learn a DT cannon because it's one of the best openings against Puyo Puyo, I guess go for it. But really, I think you can beat most players. If you're just starting out with T-spins, then I think just stick to the basic ones. Obviously, if you don't learn the ins and outs of the opening, you're not going to be able to T-spin in every single game. That's fine. It's okay to start with a Tetris. Hebomai does it all the time, although his is a calculated decision to desync the garbage on his part. That's a topic for another video. But the point is, if he can do it, you can do it, and just transition to T-spinning as soon as possible, right? So the next thing you want to do, now you have an opener, you want to try to do the opener in a sprint game. So of course this isn't going to be a classic sprint game, you're not going to try to set a record, you're just trying to work on T-spins, right? So you're going to enter a 40-line game, you're going to do whatever opener that it is that you learned, and from there you're just going to go for efficiency. And you're going to try to use as many of your T-pieces as possible for T-spins. But since it's sprint, I want you to try to incorporate the stuff I talked about in the how to play fast videos and keep your finesse errors to a minimum. So that way you're seamlessly incorporating T-spins into your play without significantly slowing down or causing you to make finesse errors that you weren't making before while only going for Tetrises. Obviously, this will never be as fast as your actual sprint score. I put on this slide aim to be within like 30% of your sprint score, but really this doesn't matter too much. It's just that you want to feel like you're comfortable using T-spins by the end. I wouldn't say like go for a specific time. Just the feeling should be very comfortable for you. So this is just the process again. We talked about each of these steps, so I wanted to just reiterate it. So the first thing you do is learn the overhangs. You can categorize them by what level the stack is next to your 1, 0, 1, whether it's a 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4 next to it. After that, you're going to practice in cheese race. Pay attention to which side the overhang is on, and pay attention to efficiency. Then you're going to learn one simple opener, not even a whole opener, just the beginning of the opener, okay? And then you're going to complete a sprint game using that opener and the same skills that you developed from cheese race. From there, I want you to create a new account, don't care about winning, and just start setting up some T-spins. And I'm sure it'll be fun. All right, so that was the process. I guess let me show you what I mean, what kind of things you should be doing in the sprint games, right? So let's just go back to Tetris for a second. Okay, so here's a Tetris game. I accidentally held something that I should not have held. Start over. So here, I'm just going to set up my TKI opener, right? Maybe this isn't the most efficient way to do it, but this is what I saw, and this is completely fine, right? So from here, now from here, I have nothing memorized. I mean, I personally do, but you won't from here. So from here, I want to find a 1, 0, 1 setup. Well, I have a 1, 0, 0, 0 here, right? So all I need to do is create a 1. So I'm going to look for an opportunity to do that. So normally I would put this here because I already know what's going to happen, but this is simulating a beginner, right? And so I'm just sort of placing all the pieces that I don't need on the side, and I'm looking for an opportunity to create a 1 opportunity over there. Aha, here it is, 1. So here I have an opportunity to create an overhang like this. The other way I could do it is by holding and using the T piece over here. So in this case, there's nothing underneath, and so the deciding factor is going to be efficiency. I don't want to be using this T piece to create the overhang when I can use it for a T-spin. So therefore, I'm going to create the overhang over here. From here, I now see that I have a 1, 0, 1 here. Notice how this is 1, 0, 1 relative to the first base instead of from the bottom, but I still have this 1, 0, 1 that I've recognized over here. So now I'm going to try to build a T-spin based on that. So here's this, here's the overhang. And obviously, the first time you do this is going to be a little slower. And let's say I'm going purely for efficiency here, and so I'm just going to clear the T-spin, even though this is just going to be a single, okay? And then from here, I already see the next T-spin over here, and so I don't care that I'm like building up a little bit, that I'm stacking over holes a little bit. I'm just trying to be efficient, right? And so I'm just going to go for it and put the T-block and put the overhang in, and from here, I'm just setting up a T-spin, right? So I'm sort of doing this as much as possible, looking for the next 1, 0, 1. So here I don't have a next 1, 0, 1, and so I'm just going to clear a little bit. There actually was an STMB cave opportunity there, but I didn't want to get too fancy right now. So I see if I put this here, now I have another 1, 0, 1 setup, right? So I can just quickly set up an overhang like that, do another T-spin. Likewise, now I have the same thing that I had before where I have a 1, 0, 0, 0, 0, so all I need to do is add the 1 there, right? So how am I going to do that? Well, there's this J piece coming that seems kind of useful, so we'll put that there. And then from here, I just want to create the overhang. Oh no, I wasn't 100% efficient. I have to use this for the overhang. Well, I don't have to, right? But yeah, I guess I could have done this instead. So I'm going to do that instead, and then I clear a T-spin double that way. Notice how this stack is really messy, and this is a horrible sprint time. I'm already at 2 minutes and 40 seconds, right? But this isn't the purpose of this exercise. The purpose of this exercise is to just find these T-spins, right? It's training your ability to just find them. In the same way, I can just like, do something like this, and I have another T-spin opportunity here. This is all fine, because all you're trying to do is create as many opportunities for T-spins as possible, right? So that's all I'm doing here. So this is not very efficient, but it's just trying to create T-spins, okay? I can do a little bit of down stacking if I'm getting uncomfortably close to the top. So back to the PowerPoint. So So that was the process. Hopefully that made sense. And so once you get familiar with that, the next thing you want to try to do is work on timing your T-spins by doing extra rotations. So once you get the T-spin to the bottom, instead of dropping it immediately, you can actually continue rotating it around if you see that they're going to send lines in the next second or so. And so you can delay when your T-spin sends so you can make sure it cancels. The other thing you can do is the fancy stuff that I mentioned before, setting up an STMB cave, the staircase stacked Tetris. So that's what I did when I was talking about the overhang setup. So that T-spin that I created where it had the Tetris hole on the left side, that was a staircase stacked Tetris. So that's another scenario you can start to recognize. You can also start doing fancier T-spin setups. So I mean, you'll see these in my self-commentated games where depending on what the opponent's doing, if you want to set up a bigger attack, you can do something like a fractal or a T-spin triple, or a super T-spin double, or any of these sorts of things, like King Crimsons or like Imperial Crosses. Those are less common, but the big ones you'll see are T-spin triples and fractals. You'll occasionally see mid-game DT cannons. Those are also a little bit less common. And then the next thing you want to do is sort of start to become more tactical with your T-spin usage. And so you want to understand when to go for a big spike versus small attacks. So like in Puyo Puyo Tetris, it's usually good to go for a lot of small attacks rather than one huge spike, just because of how the way the garbage works in that game. If you're against a Tetris player and they're near the top, and it doesn't seem like they're getting down anytime soon, then one big spike could be a good way to completely end the game. And you can change your setup accordingly. So you can instead of having the T-spin at the bottom and building over it and doing a T-spin into combo for some messy garbage, you can have the T-spin at the top and have a Tetris hole underneath so that it does a T-spin into Tetris for a lot of garbage, even though it's cleaner, because it might be better if they're in a questionable spot, right? So understanding those kinds of scenarios and changing your setup accordingly would also be a next step. So that's the end of this tutorial. Hopefully this helped if you're struggling to incorporate T-spins into your play. So next I'm going to start doing some of the more complicated T-spin openers. TKI is definitely coming. I know I've been saying that I'm going to make a TKI tutorial forever, but every time I start doing it, I think of a better tutorial to make. And I really think that this was a valuable tutorial to have to start thinking about T-spins before you even start getting overly into the nitty-gritty of openers, because I really don't think it matters to start memorizing all those openers. I know that most of the top players that you see will be talking about the openers a lot, but they already have the fundamentals down, okay? And so you need to get that down first, and then you can worry about getting all fancy with your TKI, castle top variation, and Trinity, whatever variations, and whatever you're going to do afterwards, like comboing into a perfect clear at the end of it. You can worry about all that later. But yeah, right now just focus on the fundamentals, and hopefully this tutorial sort of demystified how to start incorporating T-spins into your play. So, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. If you have any suggestions, if you have any thoughts on what I said, if you agree or disagree with the process, just let me know. And if you like the video, leave a like, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye.